The recording has started. So let us see the contents. So last class we have seen databases. So this class, what we'll do, we'll dive a bit deeper. So we'll introduce Transact SQL. What are the features of Transact SQL? And we'll also see what are the various categories of queries. But we won't be covering all these at once. As we go on with other topics, we'll be covering all these categories. And we'll also see about tables, like we will discuss about tables, what are tables and all, right? And we'll see the data types, what are the important data types in SQL Server. So that is also very important before you start writing code. We'll also see loops and conditionals. So what kind of loops and conditionals are supported in under SQL, and what are some of the built-in functions, right? So built-in functions are provided out of the box by SQL Server. So it comes along with the SQL Server. Those are very useful utility functions, like doing some computations and all, string handling, date handling. So lot many functions are there. So we'll see some of the important functions. Yeah. We'll talk about tables, some of the table-related DDL statements, right? Create, alter, drop. So those are also very important, right? So if time permits, we'll go to select statement. Okay, select statement is one of the frequently used the SQL queries. So we have to understand select statement in depth. Okay. So let me go here, Transact SQL. So as we discussed, Transact SQL, which is also called T-SQL, is a flavor of ANSI SQL. Okay. So it's based on ANSI SQL, but it also provides other features added by Microsoft specific to SQL Server. So related to SQL Server operations and all. So it is an extended version of ANSI SQL. So ANSI is an industry body which define various standards around SQL and various protocols, languages, programming languages. And it was originally used by Sybase. Most of you might have started career recently. Those who are not aware of that, when we started our career, Sybase was one of the famous or popular database technologies at that point of time. Even before SQL Server came, Sybase existed for almost like 10, 15 years. Slowly it faded away because more better database technologies have come. So T-SQL was originally designed by Sybase, used by Sybase, and later on it was taken by Microsoft to make it more robust, more efficient, and modern kind of language. And even SQL Server, like initially it was based on Sybase. So Microsoft has taken the code base of Sybase and it started building SQL Server on top of it. Okay. So coming to SQL data types, right? So what are data types basically? If you are not coming from programming background or coming from other streams and all, data type is like you have to define data, right? So when you talk about data, data can be in various forms, right? So it can be a string, it can be a number, it can be a date, so many other things, spatial data, geospatial data, and all. So it has to be represented in that particular format, right? So data types enable you to define a particular format or type for your data, right? So whether it is an integer, so based on that, various operations will be available. So normally, take any programming language, right? I mean, irrespective of the syntax and all, basic data types are like integer, numeric, decimal. These are some numeric data types, right? And char, string, varchar. Or I'm not specific to SQL Server or any other language, but normally, like date is there. Within date, you have date time, or only date, and UTC time. universal standard time, right? So many different types of data types are there, which are essential for any programming language. So T-SQL also defines some data types, right? So these enable you to specify a particular type for your data and do some related operations. So your programming language will come to know what you want to do, or if any operation is supported or not on that particular type. So let us go to a particular link, because there are a number of data types available. We'll see some of the important ones. Right? So this is an article from Microsoft. Uh, okay, so these are data types in transactions. So there are various categories. So as we discussed, there are numeric types and date time, character strings, binary strings, and so many, like other data types are available. Okay, so exact numerics are like basically like numerical data types. So where you can store numbers, decimals, floating point values, or hexadecimals, and so many other types, right? And approximate numerics are like the exact is like exactly, like for example, if you want to represent integers and all. So approximate are like approximate values, right? Like your what you say, like pi value, right? Pi and all. So those kind of approximate numerics can be represented in these data types. Date and time will have date and time limited. Character strings are like so many different character strings, because when you come to database world, you will have to represent your textual content in so many different languages. So sometimes you may have to develop a database for some other European language or something. So it has to support all the different character strings, right? So all these data types are supported in this category. Unicode characteristics. So Unicode is like like ASCII and Unicode characters, right? So if you want to store any character in Unicode format, you can represent or use this one of these Unicode characteristics. Okay. So ASCII, those who are not coming from computer science background, ASCII is a standard convention that we use, and the problem with ASCII is so just understand ASCII is one of the basic or kind of standard set of characters which you can represent, especially containing English characters, right? But when other language people started using ASCII, had a limitation of the size actually. So ASCII can have only limited number of characters. So that's where Unicode character came in, wherein the size of the character has increased and can represent a number of characters using number of languages using Unicode. Okay, so modern applications use Unicode characteristics instead of ASCII. ASCII is a legacy representation which we stopped using sometime back. Right? So binary strings and other data types are also available. Okay. So some of the main popular, so out of these, like hundreds and hundreds of, like the data types will be there, right? And other data types and so many other data types available here. So not everything will be used in all the applications. So some of the popular ones are like obviously int, all these integer types, like small int, bit. Bit can hold only one bit value, either zero or one. Okay. So decimal is there. So for floating point values we use decimal. Numeric can have integers and decimal, and you can and then the number of floating points supported by decimal and numeric, these are different actually. So decimal supports more floating points. Money, if you have some money related representation, you can use money actually, and within that you can have the money type, whether it is rupees or USD or whatever. So tiny int is it occupies less space. So integer is if it is like 64 bit, tiny int is like 8 bit. So the range is less in tiny int. So for example, for your application, um, you don't need int. So unnecessarily, if the range is very less, for example, 1 to 255 only, right? So why to go for integer type, unnecessarily acquiring more space, right? So that's why you can go with a smaller data type. And a small int is there. Small int and tiny int. Like if it is 64 bit, then let us say it is 32 bit and it is in 16 bit. Okay. So big int is like bigger one actually. So instead of 64 bit, you can have like 128 bit, right? So all these different exact numerics are available, right? So real. So in school and college, you might have studied about real numbers, right? So if you want to represent real numbers, a pi kind of, or lambdas and all, and then you can use real approximate numerics. Okay, and date time are there. So date time, time, small date time. All these are like related to date time actually. Okay, so character strings are there. Char, varchar, and text. So char is like it can hold one single character. Varchar is like a string, so it can have a string of characters, and text is like more bigger strings, right? So very big paragraphs and all can be written in text. Okay, so these are all ASCII compliant, char, varchar, and text. So coming to Unicode, more modern database applications will use these Unicode characters, enchar and varchar and text, if you want to support multiple languages, right? And binary is there. So binary, kind of true false values, right? So those can be represented in binary as well as your image. Binary is like it can also hold a binary representation. So for example, if you have a large image, you can't store it in char or all these data types, right? So it has, when you convert the image into binary form, it can be represented, or it can be represented by image data type. Okay, so where binary is there, binary is there, right? And other data types are there, like your cursor. Cursor is also treated as one of the data types. Okay. So XML, if you want to store XML, geospatial data type. So many different types are there. So one of some of the very frequently used ones are like int, like, and your float is a bit less, but still it is used. Date time is very largely used. Char is char, varchar, and varchar. So difference between char and varchar is like char is fixed. Okay, so varchar is more like it can have variable length actually. Okay, so for example, if I say varchar c equal to some string, so I can also store other strings. So whereas char is fixed length, so that is like variable character. So varchar stands for variable character. So if you see n before that, that means it supports Unicode. N stands for Unicode. So all these are like very frequently used, like n varchar, varchar. Binary is a bit less. Image, unless you are handling blob types and all, image is very less used. Cursor also used very frequently, but it is more like a programming terminology. We'll see what cursor is. And spatial geometry types, all these are like very less used actually. Okay, so that is about data types. So then we will see, because we will come across data types when we are doing programming, when we are writing some program. Okay? So T-SQL next comes the loops and conditions. Okay? So if you take any programming language, there has to be some logic built. So it can't be like your basic or assembly language where you don't have any kind of logic or supporting constructs, programming constructs, right? So in SQL also you have support for loops and conditions. So loops are like so if you want some set of statements to continuously keep on executing based on some condition, uh, those are supported by loop constructs. Conditionals are like if something is true, you want to execute something, and if it is not true, you want to do something. So those kind of conditional statements are also supported in TCP. Okay. So we'll shortly see what are these loops and conditionals. So under conditionals, you have if else. Okay. So just an example of if else is, so I'll briefly describe like what we are doing here. Okay. So declare is whenever you want to declare a variable. So we have talked about data types, right? So int is a data type, but in order to use the data type, you have to declare a variable. Variable is like a temporary storage in your primary memory, which will hold a value, right? So declare. So how do we declare a variable? So you use declare. This is a keyword, and at the rate. The variable name should start with at the rate and followed by your data type. So that is how you declare any variable. So for example, if I want to declare a varchar, right? So say declare at the rate sample var and varchar. So that is how I declare a variable. Okay. So there are two things. One is you have to declare a variable, then you have to set a value, right? So here what I'm doing is I'm declaring site value as a variable. The next statement I am assigning a value to this site value. And this is an example of if else statement. Okay. How an if else statement should be written. If is a keyword, if a particular condition. Okay. So what I'm saying, if site value is less than 25, then print something. Okay. This is how you print to the console. Right. So that will come under come in output actually. And else begin end. So begin end is for a set of statements. So for example, it's like a block. In C, what you will do, you will open parentheses, write all your statements, and end your parentheses. Right. So parentheses is not supported in T-SQL. Okay. So this just treat this as similar to parentheses, begin and end. So these are a set of statements which I want to run as part of my upper else. So within that, what I'm doing is again I'm putting one more if condition, and if it is less than 50 or whatever is the condition, I'm printing something and then else printing something. Okay. So just treat if else is a block, right? And it's not mandatory to have else. So you can just have one if statement. That is absolutely fine. Okay. So if else can take various forms. It can be one single if statement. It can be just if else statement with single or block of statements. One level of if else, or it can also be multiple levels of nested if else. So within if else, again else I am having one more if else, or within if also I can have one more if else. It's up to us like how we want to program. Okay, so that is what this block is doing, and at the end, the go is like yeah, this semicolon is not mandatory, so you can avoid using this semicolon. But the best practice is to put a semicolon. So when somebody else is looking at your code, for them it will be very easy to read. So when you are doing actual projects in real time projects, always try to use semicolon. And also these capital letters are not mandatory, as we discussed. These are case insensitive actually. So if I say else, just else, that is small letters, that is also fine. No problem. But again, best practice is use capital letters for all your keywords. Okay. At the end, Go is like it is pushing all these statements to the SQL database engine and saying like execute all these statements at once, right? So that is the purpose of Go. So let us execute this and see what happens. I think my connection is lost. Yeah. So you can see the output here. First if, because my site value is my site value variable value is 15, and which condition is taking effect? This one is true. So if this is true, I am printing first f, right? And why? So either if will execute or else will execute, right? So else is all the else will execute when this condition is false. But in my case, this is true. So it will just execute if, and it will come out of my conditional construct. It will come to here, go. So it will skip all the entire block of else, whatever is within this else. So my upper else block is up to here, right? Begin end. So it's not mandatory to use begin end. If you have one single statement, you can just put one statement like this and put a semicolon. But if you have multiple statements, you will use begin and end. So that is briefly about if else statement. Okay. Uh, what is next? Yeah. Next one is go to statement. Okay. Go to is more of a low level programming, you can say. Most of the high level programming languages like Java, .NET, and all, they stopped using go to because I mean, when before this high level language came, there was a requirement to jump to other statements. For example, if you see like the assembly language or basic, those are like sequential statements. So there are no constructs like if else and all your while and the loops and all. Right? So in order to jump to some statement, for example, if some condition is true, you want to skip most of the statements and jump to some other statement. Then we used to go for this go to statement. Okay? But the problem with this one is maintenance will be very difficult, and there can be deadlocks. Like for example, if I set a condition and go to some statement, right? So and within this I say again go to this particular block. So I'll say some statement, some block here, and say go to this particular block. It will be a deadlock. So it will go here, it will come back, it will go here, it will come back. So like that, the program will keep on running, and it will consume a lot of resources, and it will hang. So better avoid go to, but just for your information, go to is also supported in SQL, in transact SQL, because as we discussed, it started long time back, right? 2000 some 8 or something, right? So that's where like even before, like not 2000, probably in 1990s or something. Okay, so that's where like go to is still support. So declare your variable and set the value. So we'll come to while. So just understand this is another looping statement. So it is you're beginning to execute some statements. So if this condition is true, what I'm saying is go to this particular block. Okay. So what it will do, irrespective of what happened, what statements are there. So even if I have some begin and here in under if, for example, if I uh, have begin and end, right, and within this I have a number of statements, whatever it is, right. So once it sees go to, whatever is, it will ignore everything, whatever is written after that, it will just skip to this particular step. Okay, and it won't come back. It will never. So it will start executing from this particular step downwards. Okay, so that is one of the dangers in. But still, for your information, this is supported in SQL Server. Yeah. So that is about go to statement. Try to avoid it, but just know about it. If you see any legacy code where this go to statements are there, and coming to while loop. So while while is like um, if some condition is true, it will keep on executing. Okay. So once it executes this block of statements, it will again come here and it will check the condition. If it is still true, it will again execute. So one thing we have to take care of when writing while statements are, it should not end up in infinite loop. Okay. So that's where, I mean, whatever condition you are putting here, at some point it should become false. Otherwise, what will happen? It will keep on executing endlessly, and it will become an infinite loop, and your application will hang, your database will hang. Okay, so your DB objects, tables, and all others will not be able to query and use your database. So that's where, like, so what we are doing here, we are declaring a variable, we are setting the value, and while some question. If you use go to statement, then it will go to other block. Then why to write the statements after go to? Yeah. So what happens? Somebody wants to ask something. Okay. Yeah, it's a good question. So why to write the statements after go to, right? So for example, if some condition is true, then only I'm saying go to. So this may or may not execute this go to statement, right? If this condition is not true, I want to continue. For example, I have another else block here, right? So I want to continue. I can still continue from there, right? So go to need not be the last statement in your programming, in your program actually. Okay. So go to, what we are saying is go to this particular block based on some condition, right? We don't randomly say go to this particular block, right? So based on some event or some condition, we'll say that. Else, what will happen? It will not go into this. It will just continue executing from the next block actually. So did I answer your question? Gayatri, are you fine? Okay, fine. So next one is while loop, right? So while, what we are saying is when you are doing while any kind of loop, right? So you have to ensure that it does not end up in infinite loop. That is one of the I mean loophole or dangers that you may face, right? And it will hang, if it hangs entire database, it will be like bad programming from on our part. So while this variable is less than or equal to 10, what I'm saying is like begin and end block, and I'm printing something, and I'm also incrementing. So that will ensure that my value will come nearer to 10, and at some point this condition will be false, and I will come out of my loop. Okay. So let us execute this. Select all these statements. Say execute. Right? So what happens, like how many times it will execute? We started at 0, right? So it will print for how many times? 10 times or 11 times? 11 times, right? 0 to 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. And after that, once it is 11, it will not go inside, and it will print the statement which is which is outside this begin and block. Okay. So done while loop. So that is the purpose of your while loop, right? And one more thing is like if you are comparing with other languages like Java and all, for loop is not directly supported. Okay. So for you see for loop in C, C++, and other languages, right? So that loop is not supported, but you can simulate for loop using while. Okay. So for example, um, for how for looks like, for some variable equal to some assignment and some condition, then post loop you want to do something, right? So that assignment you can do out of while loop, and start the while loop that includes your condition, and at the end you want to do what are the post after that block is executed. You want to do something, right? So you can put those statements after the last statement. So do something like increment or whatever it is, right? So that's how you can simulate for loop. Okay. So next statement is break. So break and continue are useful just to ensure like you don't end up in infinite loops, and also you want to break the loop. So loop is like continuously running, right? So if some condition is true, you want to just break that loop and come out and start executing from the next statement. So that is about break. Okay. So yeah, I mean to control the loops and all these are very useful. So what I'm doing here is declaring a variable, and I'm setting some value to the variable. And what I'm saying is like while that some condition is true, I'm beginning. So within begin, I have another if statement. Okay, if else statement. So if site value is 2, so that means it starts from 0, 0, 1, 2. When it is true, it will break. Break means it will stop executing and it will come out of my entire loop. It will not execute other cycles of the loop. Okay. So and else set all these are like so this is outside while loop. Okay. So let us say, so how many times it will execute now? It will start at 0, 1, and when it is 2, it will break. That means it should execute only for 2 times. So inside while loop should get displayed only 2 times, right? Selecting all the statements and saying this. Okay, so it has run for only 2 times. It has broken from here when it is 2, and now it is saying done with while loop, which is outside my while loop. Okay, so that is the purpose of break statement. So this is not though it comes from low level programming world, it is very useful actually. Okay, break statement. Continue is a bit different. What it will do, it will not break the further loops. So it will only break the current iteration of the loop, right? So when we are looping, we say iterations. Iterations are one execution of the code block, right? So it will continue will only break the current iteration. It will continue with the next iteration. So that is a subtle difference between break and continue. Okay, so I'm declaring a variable, setting some value, starting my while loop. If it is true, it will break, right? Yeah. Else, what will happen? Begin, set site value equal to site value plus 1 inside while loop and continue. That means if I have something like some statements after my continue check, right? Print after continue. So in my case, what will happen? It will still execute for 2 times, but for 0 and 1, what will happen? It will come into this else block. It will first increment the value for controlling the next iteration, and it will also print this, and it will continue. That means this print statement should never get printed. Okay, should never get executed. So let us see what will happen. So for 0 and 1, 2 times, but this statement never getting printed. See, so after continue never got executed this print statement, because what I'm saying is like after executing this statement, I'm just continuing my iteration. That means it will go to the next iteration. So for 0, let us say it has come up to this point, print, and it has continued. That means it ignored all the statements in the block, other statements, and continued with the next iteration. That means it continued with 1, right? So that is the purpose of continue. So you may again ask like, why do we need statements after this? So again, if some condition is true within your loop, then you want to skip the further statements for that particular iteration, you will use continue. Okay. Yeah. So these are all like loops and conditionals supported in TCP. Okay. Next thing we have to understand is built-in functions. Okay. Let us this link. So similar to your data types, there are number of built-in functions. Even the number is very huge actually. Okay. So there are number of built-in functions supported. See, within aggregate, you will see hundreds. Overall, it will be in hundreds, maybe in thousands. Analytic, collation, configuration, and all these conversion functions, cryptographic functions. So there are various categories of your built-in function. But what exactly is a built-in function? So built-in function is a utility function which is offered by SQL Server out of the box. It comes along with SQL Server, which will be useful for your programming actually. So for example, you go under aggregate category. So these are all the categories which are available. Aggregate functions, analytic, collation functions, configuration, conversion. Conversion means you want to convert from one type to another type, right? So those conversion functions, cryptographic related to cryptography and security, masking and all, encrypting and all, cursor functions which can be run on cursor, data type functions, right? And logical is like logical functions. Where you can have some conditional statements and all, mathematical function, right? So many JSON related which you can work with JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which is an advanced. I mean, it came after XML. So you might have heard about XML, right? So JSON is used in the modern REST-based architecture. Okay. Ranking functions, row set, security, string related, right? So you have to manipulate. So string related functions are also very frequently used, right? And what else? System statistical trigger functions and all. So out of these, if you ask me like what are the frequently used functions, aggregate you can say count and all, right? And you can say like some of the date type functions are also very frequently used, right? And then comes mathematical functions are used, logical functions are used, frequent ones. I'm not talking about them. All are used, but frequent ones are like most popular ones. String is very frequently used. Char, concat, left, whatnot. You want to manipulate your string values, right? Text and image. Yeah, these are like less used actually, unless you are building some statistical application, right? So let us see some of these, right? So average, let us say aggregate function. So kind of mathematical functions only, but which work on aggregate values, right? So these are the return types. So example will be like from some table human resources dot employee. What I'm saying is average. I'm taking average of this particular column, and as is I'm giving some alias name. Okay, and I'm also doing some. Sum is a mathematical function as some as and I'm giving some alias name. Okay, where job title like vice president. Yeah, before we go further, right? So one aspect I wanted to tell you is if you are doing database programming, you will definitely need some data, right? Which is pre-populated with tables and all the other things, right? So what Microsoft does is it will provide database called AdventureWorks. Okay. So this is a sample database, AdventureWorks database. So when you say uh, down, Yeah. So yeah, same thing I think. So what you can see here, if you go to this particular link, I'll share this link up. Uh, just keep a section. So here adventure works. So you can go to this link and download actually. If you go to this link, so you will find some dot back files. Okay, so based on the SQL Server version that you are using, select one of these files. So it will download to yeah, you can download here like dot back file, and there is also another article which will say like how to attach install and configure, right? Create scripts. Uh, Install. Yeah, how to use that back file. So when you follow this process, what will happen? It will attach one database to your local server. Okay. So here you can see number of tables. So some sample database, right? So all these number of tables are there. Okay. And each table will contain data also. These are also populated with data. So this will be very useful for practice and all. Okay. So tables, views are there, right? Yeah, all things like, and if you got a programmability, store procedures will be there, and some functions, table value functions, stellar functions. Yeah, all these functions and store props are available. So you can use this database, do this, and you can practice all these queries actually. Okay. I'll share this. Yeah, coming to our topic, average, right? So let us do this. So human resources dot employee. I don't think that table is there. Resources dot employee table is there. So let us. So this function can be executed on a numeric column. So this is a column name, average, and the vacation hours and sick leave hours are column names, right? So let me check in our database if there is any such numeric column. Probably this one. Mm, Account key. Yeah, I think we have this account code alternate key. Okay. So first, let us see if there are any uh, columns or we have any records here. Test TB is not the right one. Select advanced works. Okay, so we do have records, and yeah, well let us try to find average of this, right? So what I will do, like avg of account code alternate key, right? Account okay. Open the file, drag and drop it. So we'll understand select statement in detail. So select average of this particular column from this particular table. Okay. So this is the overall average. So is it useful or not? Right. So in one using one built-in function, you are able to get the average of a particular numeric type. So similarly, you can do sum. So if you want to know the sum, right? Otherwise, you have to write your own logic. You have probably a stored prop to do all this. So that's what. So these are very useful actually. So these are examples of aggregate functions, right? And yeah, some mathematical functions are there like square root, root value, floor value, whatnot, exponential value, random value. Yeah, square root is there. Tan. You might have in trigonometry, might have come across tan, right? So all these things can be done. So logical statements are there. So these are examples of built-in functions. So let us do some string manipulation. Okay. What we'll do? Left. So what it will do? Returns the left part of the character string with the specified number of characters. So that means it will return a substring of your string. So what is a string? String is something like this. Okay. So if I have, it can have spaces also, right? Spaces, special characters, test value. This is my string, and I can have yeah, numbers or whatever I want, right? Some value. So I want to, what left will do, it will return a substring starting at a particular character and number of characters. Okay. Leftmost, left part of the character string with a specified number of characters. So that means it will start with 0 and it will return a substring of so many characters. Okay. So let us try to do this. Okay. Try to return um, so when you are executing only a particular function, you can use select statement. Select will, what will do? It will execute this particular function and it will display that value for you. Okay. So what I'm saying is select. My first argument is uh, my string, and then what I'm saying is like 2. That means start at position 0. Okay. And then return me substring of 2 characters. That means I should get T and E, right? Uh, okay, I did not mention the function name, so that is why it is giving error. Okay, out. So select this. Yeah. So that's what it does. It starts. It always starts from 0 and returns the substring of so many characters. Okay. When you say 2, first 2 characters, right? So like that you have write, trim. Trim is it will remove. It is useful to remove white spaces. Okay. So L trim is left side. It will trim the white spaces from left side. R trim is from the right side, and only trim is there. Just trim will do on both sides. Okay. So let us do that. So let us say in my string I have some white spaces. So when you say white spaces, what are white spaces? Without any characters or something. So I got this string from somewhere and I want to remove the white spaces before I save it in my database, right? So select this and say execute. That will trim all the white spaces from your string value. Okay. So like that, so many different functions are there. So just try it out. I will anyway share this link. So try out in your spare time. Okay. So that is about your built-in functions. So let's move to tables. So before we start looking at select statement, yeah, it's good to understand tables. So tables are the primary database objects in your database. So tables will have rows and columns, and tables are the primary place where your data resides. Okay, all other stuff like view, store, box functions work on these tables, right? Um, yeah, I mean, one good example is just now we have seen, right? So what you are seeing in this particular database, there is a table by name dim account. It is under a schema called DBO, which is a default scheme, and it has a number of columns, right? Your account key, and each column has a data type int. So when you see this, when you go to this object explorer, how to understand the table definition from here. So it has got columns, it has got keys, so many other things. So let's start with columns, right? So columns are the primarily like the cell value cells, right? I mean where the data is stored, right? So you have a primary key column, foreign key column. So we'll come to keys a bit later, but understand these are like the placeholders or the columns similar to your Excel sheet where you have columns and rows. These are like columns, okay, and the data types. Okay, so So data type is integer. Okay, and what it is saying, what else it is saying about the column? This is the column name. In the brackets, you will see whether what kind of key it is. It is at all it is a key, and the next one is the data type, and last one is whether it is null or not null. Okay, all this information is there in under columns. Okay, so when you see this particular symbol, it is a primary key. Okay, we'll talk about primary key. And a foreign key, if you see this kind of symbol, the reverse key, this, this kind of image, it is a foreign key. Okay, so similar to that, like different other columns are there. Integer type is there mostly, like n var 50. So length of 50 characters, we can up to 50 characters will be accommodated here in this particular column. So one benefit of using varchar and nvarchar is like, so for example, if I say nvarchar 50, and if some of the records have 5 characters, it will not occupy 50 characters, right? So that way I will be able to save some space, lot of space, on my database actually. Okay. But if you are sure about like every time it will be like 5 characters only, better to use char, because nvarchar will take more computation power. Okay, so yeah, so other columns are there. So coming to our topic, like columns and other columns are there. Nvarchar 50, nvarchar 300, mostly nvarchar and int are used, right? So that is how that is the basic definition of table. So table is a combination of rows and columns. Rows are like horizontal records. Columns are like vertical placeholders for having your data, right? So when I say select start from this particular table, so I will get all the records and all the columns, right? So these are all the columns I have, and these are all the records, number of hundreds of records, right? So that is about table. We have discussed about rows and columns, and we'll right now we'll see create table statement. Okay, so similar to create database, create table statement can turn out to be very big. Lot of options are there, because table is one of the main entities that you create. So let us understand few aspects of your create table. So this is a generic statement which can run into pages. Many options are there. We'll try to understand some of the important aspects. Okay, so how the statement looks like: create table. These two are keywords, and you can either precede it with database and schema name. If you don't mention these two things, it will take the current database and current schema. So in your database, if you have multiple schemas apart from the default DBO schema, if you have created other schemas, you can mention that schema name. Okay. So database name, if you're trying to create the table in some other database, you can mention the database name. Okay. So for example, I am connected to TestDB, but I am trying to create something in AdventureWorks. I have to proceed with AdventureWorks DW as the database name dot your schema name. So within AdventureWorks DW 2017, if I have multiple schemas, put a schema name here and then your table name. Okay. Otherwise, just simply have this table. Okay. So create table name, or just schema name and table name, or table name. Okay. This is a mandatory field. When you see something in parentheses, so that means it is something in curly braces, it is mandatory. Okay. So when you see something in square brackets, it is not mandatory. It is an optional value. Okay. So as file table. Okay. As file table column then comes the column definition. So column definitions will have your column data types and key, what kind of key it is, and null or not null, constraints, and all those, right? So column definition is also mandatory. So one of these, so column definition, computed column definition, so because these are in the curly braces, right? So this section is mandatory. So without column definition, what will you define in a table, right? So we'll see. So when you see n, that means you can have number of these repetitions actually. Okay. So when you say table constraints n, you can have number of table constraints. So when you see this for this particular section dot elements, you can have number of columns defined for your table. Okay, and on is like the partition, so more like memory management and file groups. You have different blocks of your files and all. So at more advanced concept. So column definition will come like, so what it is saying, you will see some parameter here, column definition. So it is elaborating the that particular parameter. Okay, column definition. So how the column definition can look like, your column name and followed by data type and number of other optional parameters, file stream, collates, parts and all. But basic things that you need is column name and data type. Okay, without which you can't create the or define the column. Okay, column name should follow all the naming conventions again. Okay. So data type. So within what kind of data type? So data type is a parameter. So what data type can hold, like type, schema name, dot type name, right? Or any inbuilt type or custom types and all, right? The XML schema collection and all, right? So then comes the column constraint. So where did you see column constraint? Yeah, these are table constraints. Column constraint. Yeah, these are column constraints. That means, what is the constraint? Some kind of limitation, right? So, for example, you want to have one particular field, you are defining the data type as int. The by default int has a range, right? Based on the size, like 64-bit, it can hold up to like let us say 60 by 536 or whatever, right? So, but you want to have a constraint. That means you want to have only even numbers, right? So if it is an odd number, you don't want to insert the particular column value. So you can have define those kind of constraints which are not directly supported by your data types, right? And column index. So all these things can be mentioned. The basic thing you want to understand is create table name and your column name and column type. These are very basic mandatory things. Rest all are like optional parameters. Okay, constraints, foreign keys, column index. Okay, computed columns. So what are computed columns? That means some value is coming in. So let us say some even number is coming in, right? And I want to always increment it by 2. So I want to always add 2 and then save to my database. So you can have computed column. That means SQL Server will apply some calculations on your incoming value, actual value. Then it will store in your column. So that is about computed column. Okay. So you can have constraints. You can define foreign keys. Check constraints. That means always check that some particular condition is met. Otherwise, it will. So I can have like for integer column type, I can have a check like it's always less than or equal to 100. So I can have those kind of checks, right? Yeah, table index and all table options. Yeah, indexes. You can create indexes on your table. So indexes are another topic. So we'll slowly see all these options. But for now, what we will do, we'll take a particular existing table, and we will see how the table definition looks like. So for any existing table, if you want to see the definition, right, you can right click the table and go to script table as create to and new query editor window. Okay, so that will show your create table statement for that particular table. Okay, so as you can see, like so many options are there, but the core part of it is this. Okay, so create table, schema name followed by table name. This is the default schema. This is my column name, then column data type, and identity, whether it is an identity column. Identity is auto increment. So that means it will start with a seed value and it will keep on incrementing. So every time you insert a record, you need not enter this particular column value. Okay. So you can just say identity 1 by 1 comma 1. You have to enter only these values. So it will automatically increment this particular column. So that is the purpose of identity keyword. Okay. So you can have all these constraints, column level check constraints and all here, or primary key. You can say primary key. Okay, so I can have all these types of key definitions, and after that, whether it is null or not null. Okay, so null or not null means whether it can hold null values or not. Right. So what is a null value? Null value is nothing. So even it is not even zero or blank string or something, right? So null value is undefined value. That means it is nothing. It holds nothing. So can it hold nothing? That is what we are saying. Whether it is not null or null. Okay. Um, yeah. So that is all. Like and comma followed by your other column name and then data type and null. So you can have number of columns here, right? So here you can see n var of 50. Okay. Yeah, and apply some constraints, right? So we can have a similar table created in our uh, test DB. Okay, you go here. It's a yeah new query. It's a test DB. So let us try to create same table in our test DB. Okay. Uh, test. I'll just put test here. Just for it's not mandatory that you have to change the table name. You can have same table name, multiple because these are different databases. So create table dbo.test dim account and saying like I'm defining the columns here. So this is the simplest create table definition you can have. Yeah. So under tables, if you go, just refresh once. Right? So if you don't see, refresh once and see. Don't think like when you run some query here, it will not immediately get reflected here. So always refresh. Then you will come to know then this you will get these actually. Okay. So test dim account is created. So if you go here, you can see all the column definitions. Okay. Yeah. So that is about create table statement. Um, yeah. Similar to that, what you have is alter table. Okay. So, yeah. So alter table is something like this. Okay, alter table with check. So for example, after you defined a table, right? You want to sorry. So you want to alter the definition of the table. Let us say you have these columns, right? So you want to change the data type of the column or put some constraint. So all these things can be done using alter table statement. Okay. So here you can see one sample like alter table with check add constraint. So what I'm saying, I'm adding a constraint on top of my existing columns. Okay. So all these column names, column types, those things can be changed using alter table statement. Okay. Then comes the drop table. So here we created one table, right? So I can say drop table, your table. Okay, drop table. Let us run. Yeah. Go here and refresh. You will see that table has gone. Okay. You can also create tables from here. So you can create new table from here. But normally we will do programming and create actually the popular frequent one is using the SQL language. Okay. You can also do all other operations are supported from SSMS. Okay. So you can go here. You can say delete. Delete is nothing but drop actually. Okay. So SSMS also supports all the operations. So that is about tables and major operations on tables. So in the next class, what we'll do, we'll dive deeper on the select statement. Okay, select statement is one of the frequently used, and there are some clauses within select statement which are very important to understand. and the order in which these clauses are executed. Okay. So we'll dive deeper on select statement, and we'll try to cover joins as well. Okay. Um, so next class will be can be tomorrow. So any questions before we end the session? Okay. Uh, Sharat, Raghu, Harsha, Chandana, Gayatri, any questions? Alekia, before we stop the session? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, try to practice. So get this adventure works database. So what I will do, I'll share the script file up to today, right? I'll put it in and I'll share the link to you. So go through those links and try to practice the built-in functions, right? Also get this adventure works database, attach it to your local server, and also practice table related statements, how to create, alter, drop tables, right? And practice these data types. So understand various data types available, what is the difference, and do some programming using loops and conditionals, and apply some built-in functions. So do all this stuff. So before that, get this database. It will be very easy and useful. Okay. Yeah. So if there are no questions, then yeah, I'll stop. Any questions? Get back to us. Get back to Chandra, me, Isha, or anyone, or post it in the WhatsApp group. We'll try to help you. Okay. Practicing is very important. Otherwise, like you'll be left behind actually. So whenever a class completes, try to practice immediately. Okay. Yeah, that's all from my side. If there are no questions, then I'm ending here. Thank you very much for joining.